Going now, man. So what's up, dude?
Yeah, it's a long time no see, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, so I wanted to ask you. Um, I know you got out, right? So you got out of the service, and then you used your GI Bill, and you went to school, right, for IT.
Yep.
Okay. So what exactly did you get your degree in?
So I have a bachelor's of science in information technology, and there's a lot of different like tracks within programs. So there was like a system administration track, a networking track, a cybersecurity track, and then I chose the business intelligence track, which is to do with databases, database administration, database analysis, stuff like that.
Okay, and then you did that where? What school?
University of Massachusetts, Boston.
Hey,
Yeah.
Boston's where you're from, right? That's where you grew up?
Oh, I grew up just south of Boston, like down in southeastern Massachusetts. So when I got out, I wanted to go back, touch base with the family, kind of reconnect a little bit, and just, ultimately, there's a lot of great schools in Boston. They got world-class institutions. But the one kind of catch about the GI Bill is, you got to use it at a public state school. So luckily UMass, the whole UMass system is pretty great system. So I was able to use the GI Bill to go to school in Boston, and it was a great time, honestly, really good time.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet, bro. Well, I'm glad, dude. I hate to see you go, man. I loved working with you, to be honest with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, we had a lot of good times together, and you caught me at an interesting time in my Army career for sure. It's like everybody that I was at Fort Campbell with for the majority of my enlistment was pretty much like PCSing, like as soon as you got there. So, and like I only had like X amount of time left. So I was kind of like a weird spot, because like all my friends, like all the people I had been there with for a minute, they all PCS. And I was like, oh, I'm getting out. So what am I going to do for like the next, like, time till I get out, So it was cool because, we met, and then, you made it worthwhile to like, have a good friendship, right? Like before I got out of the Army, which was really cool.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. I don't know. And it's hard for me to explain to even friends of mine that, I grew up with, went to high school with. I'm like, look, man, it's hard to make friends in that profession because people
Yep.
are moving all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like as soon as you meet somebody, you make a bond, you hang out, whatever, somebody's going somewhere else. It's happened to me for 10 years.
Right.
And it sucks, dude. It's good to make those connections. And then obviously you and I've semi stayed in touch, and
Yeah.
obviously talking now,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
3+ years later, 4 years later, however long it is. So that's a good aspect of it, but it's not the same as having somebody that's constantly around that you could depend on and rely on and bond with and whatever else. So
Yeah, no, and it's kind of crazy too, because like when you take a second to think back on like the times that you spent with people in the Army, right? Like, I look back on it, and I think about like all the times that I spent with so many different people. And it's just it's just kind of it's like bittersweet sometimes, because like the last time that you saw those people, you said, hey man, we're going our separate ways. Like it was, but sometimes you don't really think about it. Like you may never see that person again, unless you make an effort to like stay in touch, or, people that you spend every day with, and it's like every day for years, and it's like, just, it's kind of interesting because you don't really see that dynamic very much in the civilian world, like I don't feel like I've made some of those, deep connections with people, whether it be at work or, at school or whatever. So it's just kind of weird because, sometimes when you say goodbye to someone, you don't think like it's like, you'll never see them again. But like, unless you make an effort to see them or stay in touch, like, some of those relationships, they kind of just come to an abrupt end.
yeah, and it's hard, man, to be honest with you. because everybody has their own life, dude. Everybody's busy doing their own thing, and when you only have so much time to give, how to divvy that up with all the people that you've met and interacted with and family and stuff, it's like really hard to make an effort. And that's just a tough that's that's a tough thing to do. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is. Um, but yeah, I mean, one good aspect about making friends, when you actually make a friend in the service, at least to me, somebody that you consider, so I don't just consider acquaintances and people I work with and maybe hung out
Right.
with a handful of times. I don't consider them friends. Like, I have a different uh, criteria has to be met. Somebody that I know is
Yeah,
reliable and
definitely.
dependable and I can call on and count on. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are people I consider friends. Um, and when you make when I make a friend, especially in the service, knowing that, if it's somebody that meets that criteria to me in the service, it's a stronger bond because we're like brothers. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely.
Because
Yeah.
I know that even though you and I weren't in like a combat arms related thing, I would
Mhm.
still, put my life on the line if that's what it took. You know what I'm
Oh yeah.
saying? So I feel like that's why the bonds that you make is like a brotherhood, and those are stronger than just typical friendships that you make elsewhere.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you on that one. And it's one of those things, when you get out of the army, it's like, there's like the you still there? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you're just lagging a little bit. But it's like the that same sense of camaraderie, like that same, I use the term esprit de corps. I think that's how you pronounce it, right? But yeah, I throw that around sometimes, like, in civilian life, and it's funny because some people are familiar with it, they know the term, and some people aren't. But you'll find places, some places that you work at or like school, like those places kind of become your community. And to a certain extent, like these places try really hard to foster like a culture of like inclusivity or, belonging, but it's really nothing like the military in a sense. It's nothing like that sense of camaraderie, brotherhood, all that. It's just, and some people really do identify with their position in professionally, or their community of people. But that's definitely one thing that I do miss, is like that connection that is fostered by that level of camaraderie is, just something that is really, I would say, almost unachievable out in the civilian sector, just because the nature of the work is just far different.
Oh yeah, and I always kind of relate it to playing sports, man. It's kind of like being on a team. You know, Even though you all are working together, everybody to some degree, yeah, you signed a contract, but you kind of volunteered to do that kind of work. And then where you and I worked, you to a certain degree you volunteered to be there, right? You had to volunteer for airborne school. You don't necessarily have to volunteer to wind up at a group.
Right,
That's
right.
not like a thing. But
Yeah,
like where I'm at now, the 160th, you had to volunteer to like, assess and get in the organization stuff. So there's a bunch of things you volunteer, and then you're like you said, you're with them every day. So I always looked at it as, I was back in school playing sports, and those people, I made super good bonds with playing sports with people because it was
yeah,
volunteer. We weren't getting paid. It was something that
right.
we did, and I played football, so it's the kind of the similar thing to me, similar aspect. Like I put my I put my body on the line
Right.
for sports and the team and the school and stuff. And I made super good bonds with those people because I knew, hey,
Oh, yeah.
during the game, this dude's gonna sacrifice his body for me, and I'm sacrificing my body for him. Like we're ride or die in this situation right here. So I always looked at it the same thing. So people that I, bonded with like yourself, and I always looked at it in the same way. We're part of a team. This is my family. Like this is, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing, who I want to be doing it with, type thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that 100%. And that's one of those things where, when I when I went back to school, I found like there were some other veterans like in my classes and everything, and it was cool because you kind of form like a bond with those people, but just kind of a little bit different. Like after the after the military, you kind of share the you're sharing the experience of like going to school, right? Like you have some commonalities in the sense you're both in the military, you have a lot of prior life experience before, and it's kind of culture shock sometimes. Like that's what I realized when I was going back to school. I was in classes with kids that were 18, 19 years old. I was like 26. It's like, oh man, some of these kids some of these kids are like running circles around me academically, and it was like, it's not my fault. It's just I hadn't done calculus, years. I'm talking like almost a decade, you know what I mean? Like, and even when I was doing calculus, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't really, lights are on, but nobody's really home type thing. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't exactly a math whiz in high school.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just the one thing that when I went back to school, I met a lot of great people, like a lot of good vets that we kind of shared in the common experience that we were in the military. We had some shared experience there, some similarities, and we're very much sharing in that next kind of journey, because depending, you could be in school for I did my bachelor's degree pretty quickly, like just 2 years full time, but you could be in school for like four, and they're like 12-week semesters, and you got to go to class maybe 2-3 times a week if you want to have perfect attendance. So you do end up spending like a lot of time with your classmates. If you have group work, stuff like that. So you do get to meet some really cool people, and that's kind of been one of the interesting things. I think academia was an interesting experience, and a necessary experience, honestly, for me to get this next chapter of my life started, for sure.
So what interested you? Like, what sparked your interest in that type of career field? So when you were transitioning out from what you did as a service member to be like, nah, I want to figure out codes and scripts and do this
Hmm.
IT related stuff. Like, what sparked your interest in that?
Well, mainly you meet a lot of interesting people in IT. Honestly, there's a lot of interesting characters and a wide range of interests and stuff like that. But it's a good job. There's a lot of work in it, ranging from help desk. You could be a guy who does the help desk, to doing data analytics. You could be doing cybersecurity. But there's a wide range of work, and with everything being so technology driven these days, you could get a job that paid the bills, and where there's a decent room for advancement. You can get decent training and skills from your job, and progress, because technology jobs, as we move forward, they're just increasing exponentially. And that's one of those things too that companies, especially if you've been involved with the company and it's like a good fit, they'll see you, and they will want to hire, and promote from within, essentially, because you already understand the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
And you can grow with the company if you find the right place. You can grow with the company, especially in the technology field, and you could probably do it pretty quickly as well. So that's just one of those things that really appealed to me. It's a set of really marketable skills. There's room for growth, and if you find the right place, it's a good fit.
Yeah, and I don't know if the company and the companies, if you work for multiple up to this point, if they allow you to do so. But I feel like, what you said is true, and I feel like some of those companies, for it to be super profitable for them, especially if it's a data driven type thing, and you have the internet and access to all this stuff from your house, like it's just they can cut. It's not like having a brick and mortar store, right? Where you're there and you have to pay for lights, water, all the utilities, the rent, upkeep the building and everything else. It's like, no, here's what we do. Here's the services we offer. Here's the skills that we need. Let's hire these individuals, and then they can work remotely from home. And we
Yeah.
just cut all that overhead out.
Right.
I'm not sure. I'm supposed to hopefully talk to him this way tomorrow. But a guy that I grew up with for most of my life, he is in the IT type thing too, and he works for a company out of Atlanta, Georgia. But he lives where we grew up and kind of went to school in the north part of Georgia. So he did work at the company at the location for a while, and then
Yeah.
he requested to have access to work remotely, and then he relocated his family. So he's been working from home for several years now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great, I mean, that was one of those things that I never really had my sights set on, the remote work type thing. Because when I started school, it was 2018, right? So before pandemic times, before remote work was widely accepted, and I had a family member that worked 100% remote before the pandemic. Like the whole company was 100% remote. So, but it was very advanced, like work, very advanced technology work. So I knew that the opportunity for that would, arise if I kept developing my skills, and, if I seeked out an opportunity like that with enough experience,
Yeah.
that could have been something, I could get involved with. But the good part now is that with the coronavirus and the COVID-19, um, the remote work aspect of things has been just more widely accepted, and hybrid work as well. And I work remote now, and the company I work for, they have a vision to at least implement a hybrid model. But just having that flexibility to work from home is definitely a good thing for sure, and you get a good work-life balance in a sense. I was working at a place, and I didn't really think that I was on a good path for, decent work-life balance, so that's one thing that I really took into consideration, after school when I was trying to prospect a few different job opportunities. And I'll tell you, the remote work or hybrid work, just the work-life balance is it's good, and you can work in the comfort of your own, home or apartment, and go outside at lunch and take a walk, and go check the mail, and as long as you deliver on the tasks that are asked of you, and you're engaging with, your management and also your teammates, it's a good situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been one great part about the technology field as well, is that there's a lot of opportunity for remote work, and it does provide a good work-life balance for you.
Yeah, that would be legit, man. I wouldn't mind doing that, but I'm a fucking idiot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna keep it real with you, bro. I can't technology fucking nothing. Like, uh, I I kind of fumble fuck around and figure stuff out, and
Yeah.
I'm semi tech savvy to a certain degree. I know the basics. Like, even though I'm looking at you here, like I have a
Right.
webcam, my computer's here, but I have my computer connected to my TV that's in front of me, so I'm like looking at the TV. So I have
Yeah.
a bunch of things going on that normal people might not set up. I
Right.
find that stuff interesting, but as far as like going in and trying to troubleshoot some kind of Python script or something, like,
Yeah.
bro,
Yeah.
that you might as well give me NyQuil and put me to sleep. Like, I
Right. Right.
so I'm more of like a hands-on, like, hey man, what do we need to do? Let me show up at your house and fix something. Like,
Yeah.
I think my mind and just what I'm used to. I'm more of like a trade skill type guy,
Yeah.
where I can just show up and fix something, electrical, plumbing, stuff like that. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard for me, even though I'm interested in technology and I play video games and I stream,
Mhm.
like play video, get like I mess with technology and it's
Right.
integrated in my day to day life. Like, I don't think I'm smart enough to like do something remotely from home, unless
Yeah.
it was interviews, unless I was just hired,
Right. Yeah.
unless I'm
Yeah.
just hired and I'm like, hey, we got Stephen Murphy here. Let me interview you for this job position. I can understand technology enough to, hey, what criteria of a person we're looking for, and does this
Mhm.
person meet the criteria we need to hire, type thing.
Right.
But I can't go in and fix programs and stuff, bro. I'm
Yeah.
an idiot.
No, well, that's interesting though, because when I worked at a hospital, and I managed the database of all the equipment, all the non-clinical equipment, so the air handlers, the ductless split systems, the refrigerators, all that stuff, right? So it's all in a database, and that's how they remain in compliance with the rules, right? Like, the medical rule says, hey, this piece of equipment has to be looked at once a quarter. So they had a software solution and a database to make sure that the work orders came out, and they had a historical record of everything that had been done to the equipment, right? And I met so many awesome people, honestly. It was cool. I really enjoyed the job, honestly. Because I met a lot of great people, and it was like an application of technology that was interesting, right? Like I wasn't working directly with like tech people. I was working a lot with HVAC guys, electricians, plumbers. And like the cool part was I was able to kind of like merge the technology into like their day-to-day operations, because like when I first took the job, they had it with the technology. Because the management wanted to carry around like iPads, and like so to see like their daily work and all that, and these guys were like, no, not doing that. Like, and the iPads would like they drop off the internet, or like the thing becomes a brick to these guys, but like after working with them and like getting to know them, and I was able to get the technology working pretty well for them, and they loved it. And but that's just like a great, it's good to realize your skills for sure, and like where your strengths at and your interests lie, because when you choose to get out of the military, or whatever path people do take after the military, there's a lot of options, you know what I mean? And I met a lot of cool people in that job. Some of them were veterans too, HVAC guys that were HVAC certified. Um, you know, and there's a lot of work in those trades and skills, whether it's HVAC, plumbing, electrical. I worked with a lot of master electricians, a lot of master plumbers too. And those guys, they'd work 9 to 5 at the hospital. They'd be loving life, because a lot of that work is like service call work, right? Like they're on the road, they're in and out of people's houses, in and out of people's businesses. So like working at the hospital is like a really good situation for them. You know what I mean? Like they get 40 hours, benefits, good pay. Like, they answer calls. It's like very service based. But that was just one of the things where on the side though, these guys, they would be like, oh yeah, this weekend I was wiring up a house, doing some side work, or putting a transfer switch in for someone's generator, or they'd be doing side work, and they'd be doing really well for themselves, and they
Oh
have
yeah.
good skills, good network of people. A lot of these guys have beautiful houses too, because they know all the right people, and like they have all the skills, to kind of say, hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me, type thing, and yeah, that's one of those things where I had a buddy who got out of the Army and moved back to Massachusetts, and I think he got involved with the electrical union, um, or one of the big unions, maybe the steel workers. But either way, there's a lot of programs out there as well for transitioning military to get involved with the trades. And I mean, an area like Boston, the union is huge, and they have every building that's built in that city, it's a union job. And
Yeah.
everything from literally the electrical right on through to like, the steel beams, it's a big union gig. And there's a lot of good opportunities out there and programs too. Like if college isn't your thing, like that's cool, you know what I mean? Like, but it's important to like realize that, hey man, it's not your thing, and you know you got to do something that you're going to enjoy and that's going to fit your needs, and like be something that aligns with you as a person, because you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. It's
Hmm.
going to become your job and your life in a sense, and that's just one of those things where if it's going to be take up a large amount of your time in your life, you might as well be something you enjoy doing, and you're remotely good at.
Yeah, and you met my buddy Stefan, and we hung
Yeah.
out, and that's what he does, electrical work. And they had a tornado come through, mess up a lot of stuff, and he got a lot of side jobs, man, because a lot of the main service panels on the side of people's houses,
Mhm.
trees and tree limbs fell down, hit the cable, pulled it out, messed it up. And he was doing them back to back to back. And plus he does like installs people's light fixtures, and adds more receptacles or light switches or whatever, whatever. But yeah, I mean, after hours, he gets a lot of additional side work too, and can stack money up and things like that. So trade skills are like a good thing. It's funny you mentioned HVAC, because a lot of people that I know that it seems to be more and more veterans are getting out, going and doing HVAC stuff, because an
Yep.
HVAC tech gets paid a pretty good amount of money.
Yep. And oh yeah. And like, so controls automation is like one of those things too that, you know, I tell people to look into, especially if they're interested in HVAC. It's like the controls within like an air handler, like the things that open and close the dampers, and um, you know, like Honeywell and all those Train and all those big vendors. You know, they'd come to the hospital I worked at, and you know, they have very specialized pieces of equipment, and you know, these are $1 million air handlers, right? And like the air handlers, they make sure the air that goes into the, you know, an operating room isn't, you know, is clean, right? It's not tainted with some outside contaminant that could cause an infection or something.
Yeah.
And you know, even when you think about like the work, the HVAC work in general, right? Like outside of the healthcare setting, I would talk to some of these guys and they'd be like, yeah, you know, like buildings, some of these buildings, they have, you know, million dollars worth of HVAC equipment in there. And, you know, when you think, I never really thought about it like this, but like you had people, thousands of people working in some of these buildings, right? And their comfort is pretty important to them getting stuff done, you know. Like if you're an employer and you have a huge building with thousands of employees in it and they're constantly cold, you know, in the winter, and then the summertime it's so hot that they can't, you know, they can't even focus. You know, that's the reason why a lot of these big HVAC companies and big HVAC vendors, they get a lot of work, because you know, companies realize that they may not, you know, they may not have the need to have a facilities department that has an HVAC guy, but they know that they need to at least maintain their HVAC equipment for the comfort of their employees, you know? I never really thought of it like that, but like I met a lot of cool people that worked in HVAC, and they would share so many funny stories about like everything from like service calls, like doing like boiler work and stuff like that, right on through to like big corporate customers where they'd be on the roof all day, you know, air handler, you know, big air handlers open and everything. So yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting people in that line of work for sure, and there's just a ton of work to do in the trade. So although I had like a tech job, I had like an interesting experience working with those guys on a day-to-day basis. And
Yeah.
you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, if you want to work with your hands and you want to work with work around work around like people like together and stuff like that, like in person, yeah, that's a great route to take, you know. And that's like another huge part about, you know, leaving the military or whatever. It's like finding your tribe, you know, like finding what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where, you know, you got to try out a few different things, right? Like you might not find the thing that really makes you want to, like, you know, get up and go to work every day, but
Yeah.
you know, ultimately, you know, you try a few different things and you figure out like, all right, you know what, like I'm still going to give this a good effort, like I'm still going to put in my best, but this just isn't the opportunity for me, and like I'm going to make plans accordingly to change my path. But you know what I mean? It's like you have to try a few different things, and then from there, you know, just find what sticks and run with it.
So so we talked about you going to school and using the GI Bill. So how did you go about using the GI Bill? So once you transition out, who do you go through to get your benefits, and how do you set that up through the school?
Yeah, so I kind of went wild with it, right? So like I got out of the Army in, it was like November, and on terminal leave, right? And I started school in January. I went right in there. So I had done all the paperwork, I had applied, and when you apply to a school, you know, there's an application process, and you can check that you're a veteran, and well, they're going to ask that, but you know, you check that you're a veteran, you know, you say where you served at, and then from there you can get in touch with a like the veteran representatives, right? Like we had an office of veteran services essentially at UMass Boston, and it was some of the greatest people, honestly, that I came across, like in that time when I was leaving, you know, leaving active duty and like transitioning into the civilian world. Mainly because that process could be a little daunting, right? But luckily, the school I went to had an office, veteran services, and they say, hey, we need you to apply for the benefits, get the certificate of eligibility, have them send it to us. You get a housing allowance on the GI Bill, so you have to set up like all your direct deposit stuff and that stuff. And it is important for sure to pay attention a little bit in the ACAP, because you're going to set up like an e-benefits and stuff like that, right? And when you set it up, you're ACAP and you're like, oh, I just want to get out of here. Like, but it's very important because you want to write down your passwords, remember what accounts you set up and stuff, because it could be a little daunting when you're trying to get all that stuff squared away, and make sure they have the right mailing address for you so they can send you the paperwork. And a lot of that stuff is still there. They've transitioned a lot over the last 2 years to more digital based interactions and services, but a lot of it was like, hey, we're going to mail you this letter. From there, we're going to need you to then scan that to us, scan that to your school. But yeah, the process could be a little daunting for sure, but that's just one of those things where most public institutions at least have some sort of veteran services office, at the school. Most
Yeah.
private institutions as well, and there's a lot of great people in there. Everyone at the school I went to was either a veteran or was a family member of a veteran that worked in the office, so like they knew exactly kind of where you were at, and they deal with that all day, every day, right? Like they'll go to the VA and they'll say, hey, this person's enrolled in 4 classes instead of 5, like we need to adjust it, and stuff like that. So definitely one of those things where if college is the route you want to go and use the GI Bill, get in touch with the good people at the Veteran Services Office at the institution, and they should definitely be able to point you in the right direction as far as what paperwork is needed, what stuff you're going to need to do on your end. As long as you just follow through and provide the right documentation and all that stuff that they need, they'll get you enrolled, and ultimately they'll take care of you, and that's one thing that really made going to school like more enjoyable for me, was the fact that I could just focus on doing well in the classes. Like I didn't have to worry that like my certificate of eligibility didn't go through, or like that they didn't know how many classes I was taking. Like the Veteran Services Office really took care of me, and it just allowed me to focus in on the school and to focus on doing well in the classes, because that's one thing on the GI Bill for sure in undergrad, that you want to make sure if you fail one of those classes, you're paying it back. You're paying that money. You're paying that money back, man. You know what I mean? So, and you spent 12 weeks of your time, commuting to the school. At least I was, like commuting to the school, and it was like, I just like looked at it and I was like, oh no, I can't fail anything, because that's the thing, is that I didn't want to have to pay anything back, and I'm spending so much time trying to get this done, and it was just like one of those things where some of the material was like tough. I'm sitting there taking a pre-calc class. I'm like, oh man, but it's one of those things where I realized like, hey, I can't fail this class, and like I'm on a path that I put myself on here, and like I want to graduate by this time and move on to another thing, so I really kind of put a little bit of pressure on myself to pass the class as the first try, and kind of grit through it a little bit to make sure that it was all good to go, so I wouldn't have to be paying back money or
Yeah,
disputing
dude. I mean,
things.
obviously, you're a fucking stud, bro. You was gonna get it done, man. You're a smart dude. You know what I'm saying?
So, yeah, that was it was an interesting experience, but for sure, man. It's like if that's the route you want to go on the GI Bill, figure out what school you want to go to, research it, figure out what school, what place has a program that, aligns with you. And more times than not, that they have veteran services offices and, at least a representative that will help you through that process. And, and they're really cool people. They're just really great people to get to know. And, the school I went to, they have like a yearly dinner, and, a couple events throughout the semester as well. And it's cool because you get to meet people, people that went to the school who are like now out in the workforce, and they come back and they say, hey, I work here, We're a vet friendly place to work. We love hiring veterans. We want you to come just take a look at what we have to offer and stuff like that. So it provides you also with opportunity to network, and
Yeah.
that's huge. It's huge to get to know people and to do that little bit of networking, like just a little bit. You don't have to be selling yourself like a car salesman to anyone that's willing to listen. But if you make a connection with someone, a meaningful connection for sure, and that's a route you want to take, that's going to benefit you more times than not. That you already have a contact with that company, someone you could email, someone you could say, hey, it was nice meeting you. It was great talking with you. I'm interested in, taking this position at your company. Is there any way we could get in touch, talk about this? And that's just a huge thing, because I think about it like this too. In the Army, think about how many people we used to we come across every day, on a daily basis, and you're always chopping it up with people. You're always talking to people, and you're always saying, I work in this shop, but you work in that shop, and this is my role, this is my responsibilities, and then
Yeah.
these are your roles, those are your responsibilities, that type of stuff, and it's just like that on the civilian side, like that little bit of networking and saying, hey, my name is, Steven, it's nice to meet you. This is what I do. This is what I specialize in. And just doing that little bit of networking, man, that's like, it'll pay dividends for sure, and it's one of those things that, people say it's not about what you know, but it's about who you know, and I think it's a little mix of both, right? It's never either one or the other, but it's a little mix of both for sure. And it's good. There's a whole lot there in that college piece that if you're just plugged in and if you give it a chance and you try your best, like good things will come of it for sure.
Yeah. So you said you took a job and you moved up to Maine, right?
Yeah.
How long you been up there now?
Coming up on a year actually next month, which is
Man.
like, yeah, dude, honestly, so, I moved back to Massachusetts. That's where I was from, my old stomping grounds, right? And I had a job in Boston, and I was like, oh, I wasn't really sure though what my work-life balance was going to be like, and housing costs in that area, like the Boston area, whew, it was steep. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
can imagine.
Yeah, it was steep. And I had a pretty nice apartment. Like living situation wasn't bad, but I feel like I could have done, a little bit better. And I was like looking at places where I could, move to and pursue another opportunity, but still kind of be within at least the driving distance of my family, right? Like my family's in Massachusetts, that's where they live. So,
Yeah.
um, and that's one other thing too, is that, the military puts that sense of adventure in you for sure, and you get out of the Army, you want to move back, maybe make up for some lost time with your family, spend some time with them, be able to be at a Thanksgiving and a Christmas in one year. You know what I mean? Like that was something I wasn't able to do when I was in the Army. I'd go
I
home,
know.
you know what I mean? I'd go home once a year for 2 weeks, during like block leave, and that would kind of be it. I would never really go back, so like being at like Thanksgiving and Christmas, like at least for 2 years in a row, like that was just like huge. And it was, it was really good. But it's just one of those things where like the sense of adventure kind of got me, and I was like, I did a lot when I was in Boston. I saw all the sites, I was all the time in the city, and I loved it. I loved the area and everything, but it was one of those things where I felt like there was just like a lot out there that I still hadn't seen, and Maine came on my radar because it's beautiful. It's naturally beautiful, and it's like one of those places that it kind of merges a few of the things, down in Fort Campbell, got a country, rural setting, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then Boston specifically, it has some beautiful water, ocean. I love that, But when I came up here, I came up a few times just to see, if it would suit me, and it was just like, it incorporated like two things that really resonated with me, like the rural type of country setting, and then also like just beautiful ocean and coast. So I just made the decision, that I wanted to be kind of close to my family, stay within like, 1 to 2 hour drive. But, I wanted the ability to, kind of live my own life, explore a new place, see some new sights, and adventure around a little bit. So Maine has been great. It's been a good
Yeah.
opportunity to do that for sure. And my girlfriend, I met her when I was in school down in Boston, and she decided to move up here with me too. So that's cool. You know what I mean?
Dang, boy.
Yeah. Yeah, you already know. So yeah, no, that's good stuff, man, for sure. And it's like, yeah, it's one of those things where the army, you move around what every 3-4 years, maybe 5 if you're lucky. Maybe you get an assignment, and like, maybe you get an assignment and you can maybe spend 5, 6, 7 years there, depending on if you know the right people, or branch hooks you up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Depending on what deals you can pull. But you know what I mean? You're gonna move around like a fair amount, and I just looked at it like when I finished school, like that was kind of like my first opportunity in the civilian world to kind of like pull a civilian PCS. You know what I mean? Like go move to a new place, experience some new stuff, and trying to kind of get a fresh start. Start
Yeah.
start new and starting on a fresh page.
Yeah, man, that's good, dude. I'm happy for you. I hope Maine's working out, bro.
Yeah.
What does so you said you met your girlfriend in school. What does she do? Is she in the same field?
No, she works at a school with kids that have special educational needs.
Okay.
So yeah, it's good because everything's
Yeah,
kind
she's
of
got to deal with you, and you're definitely
right.
special.
Right. Yeah, I'm dysregulated from time to time. So it's good though because you know when we're living in the city, it's like traffic. It's hard to get around. You got to commute in. You got to fight for parking. But we live in a nice community up here, and she works in the town over. So it's like an easy drive for her. I work in the town over as well when I do have to go into the office. So it's like we have 10-15 minute commutes, no traffic, and the people are really cool. Like it's a good sense of community. People are like super friendly. Sometimes when you're in the city, like people, head down, earphones in, you're walking to the train, whatever. But up here, people are like, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's up? So you get that little community aspect of it too, and it's just like a slower pace of life, which has been good because you get outside, you enjoy the beauty. Man, you get to experience a little bit of like the city down in Portland, Maine, and then go all the way up to like Bar Harbor, somewhere up there, and it's just like Booth Bay. It's just there's so many beautiful scenic places. You can go to North Conway, New Hampshire, which has Mount Washington. And it was our first fall up here this year, and dude, beautiful,
Beautiful. Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. Like the colors, man, and the trees. And we went to like they have a lot of fairs up here, big fairs, and it's like you go to the fairs and you see all the animals, and it's like it's just very fall, like when you think of like the ideal fall setting, and like it's Maine, it's northern New England for sure, the ideal fall setting. And if you ever get a chance to come up and check out the leaves, you just let me know, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's worth
Yeah, I
it,
would
dude. It's
love
worth
to,
it.
dude.
Yeah.
Um, my wife's a teacher too, man. She's got to deal with kids all day. That's probably the only reason she can put up with me because
Yeah.
I'm a kid for life. You know what I'm saying? I'm hard to
Facts.
deal
Yeah.
with.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so what do you do like outside of work? Like what are your hobbies and stuff? I mean, when's the last time you went fishing?
Oh, dude. It's funny because I spend a lot of time by the water. I love the ocean, man. There's just something about it. I love the beach. I love the coast. It's beautiful. Um, and I see a lot of lobster boats up here. And I always tell my girlfriend, I'm like, man, what I'd give to be the captain of my own ship out there. Just throwing some pots. And it's like, sometimes the work I do in technology, you could write 100, 200 lines of code, right? And it performs an action, and yeah, it does you've done what you've asked it to do, and you've fulfilled the requirements. But there's something to be said about the manual labor in a sense, right? Like, hey, we have 50 pots, and the work is done when all those 50 pots are in the ocean, and then we're going to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
pick them up, and we're going to harvest them, and then we're going to put all the 50 pots back on the deck, like something like that. Like the Army definitely put that in me, right? Like the idea that, like, you could be a SIGINT analyst today, but tomorrow there's a detail to go empty out the Connex. So, you know, like you get that little bit of manual labor, and you'd always, you know, I'd sometimes it'd be like hot as hell. I'd be down there in the motor pool cleaning out the Connex, you know, top off, and be like, oh man, this sucks. But like, you know, sometimes, you
But
know,
it's like a good break, man. That's one of the things that
right.
I've liked. I don't really get as much now in like the
Mhm.
last 2.5 years so much, but that's one of the things I like because I'm like, look, man, I go to work today or tomorrow, I don't know what I'm gonna be doing.
Yeah,
I may
yeah,
go in, they're like, hey man, we're jumping.
yeah, right.
Grab your
Mhm.
ACH, go to
Get out there.
manifest. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Next thing I know, 4 hours later, I'm jumping out of an aircraft.
right. Yeah,
Um, so I like that mix where I wasn't, you know, there's no way I could be like an assembly line worker. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Like this this vehicle part comes down and I freaking screw on this other part and it goes and I just do the same thing over and over
Yeah,
again and it never changes. Like not a chance, never gonna happen. You
yeah,
know,
right.
uh, I'd rather try to bum for quarters on the street corner or something like. But but you're right. Like, and again, like I said, I'm not super into code. I don't want to say never, never say never, right? That's the thing. But more likely than not, I will never write a code, right?
Right.
It's not something I'm interested in. Maybe I'm interested, I can come up with the idea, right? And I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
why is something like this? Why can't we have something that automates and provides, you know, X, Y, and Z as an output or something like that? And then give
Yeah,
that idea to somebody that knows how to make it happen. And then I get satisfaction out of, hey, I had this idea and now we have a solution.
yeah,
But getting there, I'm not the guy, you know.
right,
But
right.
I think there's a, even whenever I transition out, whenever that may be, like I want to find like a good mix. I want to be able to mirror the two together to where I can do kind of both things. So you know, whatever it is, let's use like home automation, right?
Mhm.
Technology, smart home technology is growing and advancing. People are going to start integrating it into their homes. Well, there's a
Yep,
lot of homes, you know, there's tens of millions, hundreds of millions,
right.
whatever homes, apartments,
Mhm.
duplexes, townhomes, whatever you want to call it. Well, eventually, you know, everybody's going to have a panel on the wall where you tap and function to do this, right? So it's good to know how those things work and to be able to install it into somebody's house, explain to them the functionality and be able to show up and troubleshoot it.
Yeah,
So you're getting kind of, you know, both worlds. You're getting the manual labor of installing it. You actually have to show up, troubleshoot it, but you know the technology, you know how it works, you know how to integrate it to somebody's home.
yeah. And that kind of, so, you know, I follow like a lot of people in technology and in the tech world. And, you know, one person said something that was very interesting to me, and it was that every company is a technology company, right? And to a certain extent, you know, I agree with that, because it's like even small businesses that you wouldn't expect, you know, to be using technology, right? There's some portion of that that is intertwined within their operation, you
Yeah.
know, and it's, you know, it's one of those things that the way you leverage the technology, is going to directly impact essentially your success, right? Like if you have a competitor and they're giving like a better digital experience to the end customer, you know, that could very well translate into them getting the business versus you getting the business, you know. So it's one of those things where technology is definitely, it's intertwined into everything that we've been doing, you know, for like the last like 20 years, you know, and it just keeps exponentially growing, you know.
Yeah, and you're right. Anytime, like, I mean, recently, you know, without getting into it, I hired attorneys, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, how do how do I find who I want? So this is a service that I needed. Now I got to find the right business to implement said service. So I'd had referrals to this one guy. I had a couple referrals. I had 3 people refer me to this dude. So I'm like, all right, let me go check him out. So I looked him up, went on his website. His website was dog crap.
Right,
You know, I was I was
right.
like, this dude, you know, such and so. I just didn't have a good feeling based on that. So I looked around and
Yeah,
everything, and I found somebody that they were integrated a bunch of things. Their website was up to date, like all
right.
their reviews and comments were up to date. It wasn't from like
Yep.
2 years ago. 3 years ago. They had videos. This law firm even had like started their own podcast and had recent videos where they talked about this and that. So they were kind of up to date, and it was fresh and it looked good and all that. The presentation was well put together. So I'm like, let me contact these
Right.
individuals. And that's how they got my business. Even
Yep.
though the other guy, I had 3 like personal referrals, it was like website just wasn't put together well. All the reviews and everything that the guy had mentioned was from like 2018, 2017
Right.
and stuff. And I'm like, when's the last time this guy's been in the courtroom? Based on the website, you wouldn't be able to tell.
You
You know
wouldn't
what I
know.
mean?
Right.
I'm
Yeah. And
like,
that's,
so
yeah, that's that's really where we're at too. When you think about it, like from a business perspective, it's really like you make, essentially, when you're on the internet, it's a buyer's market, right? Like, it's not so much a seller's market, it's a buyer's market, right? I can find the same item, I can find the same service offered to me 10, 15, 20 times, in a matter of seconds, and
yeah,
it's like, it's really like one of those things where if you don't, you can spend millions of dollars on advertising, right? Like, you can spend millions of dollars advertising on the radio, the television, all these other, outlets, right? But ultimately, if you drive people to a website that doesn't work, or if you don't have like an up-to-date digital experience, like, people are just going to be like, oh nope, on to the next one. And it's literally like that quick, because we live in a world where we don't even have to think about what's coming our way anymore, right? Like, everything's recommended. You look at one thing and you're recommended 3 other things. You go to one website, there's 4 other websites that are competing for that ad traffic, so they'll come up,
yep.
boom, boom, boom. And it's like, it's definitely one of those things where having just a little tech savvy, even if you want to get into like a small business scenario, like having like a little bit of technology prowess, to, or at least a little aptitude for it, is going to help you a lot. Because ultimately, yeah, you could be in a business that requires no actual technology to be used in the service you offer, right? But when you think about it, like, if your competitor has a better website, or let's say they appear on Google better, like,
I
they're
was
going to
about
be
to
one of those.
say, I use, so this is just how I do it, regardless of what I'm going to do. Like, if I'm looking for a service, we were talking about HVAC, right? So say I'm having issues with my HVAC system and I need somebody to come and look at it. First thing I do is, air conditioner service or HVAC service, whatever you're looking for. And then all these people pop up, right? And, I'm here right outside of Clarksville. So everybody pops up in Clarksville. First thing I do, start scrolling, because it pops up on Google, the little Google Maps thing pops up, and then the whole list, and then it has reviews. I start scrolling through who's got more reviews, right?
Right.
So if there's 10 people, some of them got 6 reviews, some of them got 116. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I look, okay, blah, 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 click the review, kind of scroll through, see who's got the majority of the best reviews, go to their website after that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, who's got a decent number of views, who has more good ones than bad ones. And then based on that, I filtered it down to like 3, companies. And then from those 3 companies, I go and look at their website. And then based on the presentation that's given to me from that, I make a phone call to one of them.
Yeah.
That's how I do
Right.
every business I've ever contacted. Because if you only have, even if you have a bunch, right? If I go and just for easy math, if you have 100 reviews and 35 of them are like, this dude never called me back,
Right.
they made an appointment and their people didn't show up, and there's like a bunch of those, like I'm turned off from the get-go.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was with that law firm. Like, even though I was referred to the guy, he had, I don't remember, just I don't know, 40 something Google reviews, but he had several like bad ones, like could never get the guy on the phone. He never, followed through
Right.
with promises, this, that, and the third. But I had like people that I know and respect that are like, hey, man, contact this person. So I was like kind of torn, like, hey, man, his online digital preference profile doesn't look good, even though
Okay.
these people
Yeah.
told me he's a good guy,
Yeah.
So I'm like, I was like, I just didn't have a good vibe, good feeling. I called somebody else, and
Yeah.
that's how I do
Exactly.
every business.
Yeah, and that's what you got to do too, because when you think about it, right? Like, you're spending time, you're spending money, right? This is something that you're looking to do. You're the customer, right? So you want to get the best deal, you want to get the best value, so it's one of those things where you got to do your due diligence, and it's like,
Yeah.
hey,
And I related it to like you said, you can get a bunch of people. So if you own a house and you want this nice deck on your backyard, like a bunch of people will show up and build you a deck. But at the end of the
yeah,
day, if you're spending 7, 8, 9, 12 grand or something, like that's a lot of money and you want a good service for the money that you're providing. And it's kind of a crapshoot. Like even if you go off the Google reviews and did what I said, you still might not get a quality deck. Like it just might not turn out the way that you want. So you have to put a lot of trust in somebody when you're giving them a lot of money.
oh yeah,
So that to me, that online profile and presence makes a huge impact about how I pick your business because of, I have a lot of steps to go through, subconsciously to call you and have you come out and do the job. So to me, a business has to have that online presence and even have a good personal presence when they show up in order for me to be like, okay, this is the individual that I'm going to give $12,000 to.
yeah, right,
Because at
yeah,
the end of the day, bro, we're below the poverty line. You know what I'm saying? 12
yeah,
grand,
yeah,
12 grand's a lot of money.
yeah,
So that's how I do it. And I think businesses or people need to, like you said, everybody's a tech company. Everybody needs to make sure that they can market themselves the best way they can within their means. Everybody don't have unlimited money. You can't pay for ads and this and that, and I got it. But if you're gonna pay money to do a website, like spend time and
yeah,
do it
do it
correctly.
right,
You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. That's the one thing too. It's like I feel like in the Army we learned that you're gonna do something, you do it right, right, and it's like if you didn't do it right, somebody's gonna reprimand you for it, retrain you, and expect you to do it right. Like show you what right is, and then expect you to do that right, like deliver. And that's just one of those things where it's like you meet a lot of people, like you come across like a wide range of people out in the civilian world, and it's just one of those things where there are certain like intangibles. You know how they always like say like there are some intangibles that people have like in the NFL draft. It's just like some skills that they've developed over years of doing their craft. And I look at it like there are certain intangibles that come from time in the Army or time in the military in general, right? And it's just like doing things right, looking decent, being presentable, being on time. It's those things that I've noticed are things that if you keep those things that have been ingrained in you, if you want to start a business or when you do, get a job at a large company, those things, doing those intangible things that were put into you in the military, I mean, they're gonna separate you. They're gonna put you into like a higher echelon, I guess you could say, of worker, in a sense where like the management's going to know, all right, this guy's going to be here, he's going to be on time, he's going to look presentable, you know what I mean? Like right out of the gate, like if you're doing that, you're going to separate yourself from, people who aren't doing that. And it's just one
Yeah.
of those things where, there's some things that there's some things in the military that don't translate so well out in the civilian sector, but those intangible things are things that you should definitely take pride in, doing something right, and providing something, like if you provide a service, providing the best service that you possibly can, and like stuff like that. And I feel like those are things that we learned in the military, and it's like, man, if you can do that out here, you'll be able to separate yourself from the pack, and like people will depend on you, and it's a good feeling.
Oh yeah. Well, man, I don't honestly don't know how long we'll be going. It's a Saturday. It's a weekend, brother. I don't want to keep you any longer. I feel like we talked about a lot.
Yeah,
We definitely got to catch up more on like a personal level at some point. So I look
yeah,
forward
for
to
sure.
doing that. And I hope we can figure out a way to meet. I'd like to come up there, man. I've never really been up north.
Yeah,
I mean, I've traveled all over the place because of the service and whatnot, but I've been to like Colorado and
yeah,
Arizona and Virginia, the DC area, Maryland, but I've never been That's pretty much it. It's pretty much the
Right.
states I've been to. You know what I'm saying? I passed through Texas, but never stayed, never went on vacation, never saw sightseeing. Been to California, but that's about it when it comes to the states. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, Northeast, it's beautiful. It's 4 seasons, right? You get the fall, winter, spring, and then summer. Summer's great too. So it's like, yeah, I encourage everyone to make your way Northeast for a little bit of time. All in New England's really beautiful. You got the mountains of Vermont. You get Rocky Coast of Maine. Massachusetts has the Cape and the Islands. Great, great, great stuff. Beaches, stuff like that, and there's a whole lot of good stuff up here, so it's might be worth it to make a venture up north of the Mason-Dixon there.
oh yeah, I'd love to, man. I'd love to. I'm a Southern boy at heart, but I know there's got to be some good things north of the Mason-Dixon line. You know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah.
But yeah, Bob's over my shoulder telling me we got to end this. I don't want him to attack me or something, but man, I appreciate it.
Of course, dude.
If you ever need something, we got a mutual thing going.
Yeah, likewise. Let me know.
So you reach out to me anytime, man. Like I said, we're bonded. We're like brothers. So take care. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy it, and just hit me up anytime, man.
Yeah, for sure, Bills. Anytime, man. Phone's always on for you, bro.
All right, brother.
Oh yeah, man.
Later, dog.
Later.